Have you ever wondered how you could transform your author's journey into something that is compelling and attracts your ideal clients? Well, in this episode of the Author Switch podcast, I'm going to be talking about your hero's journey and how you can use it to make an effective and compelling story for your book.
Are you an entrepreneur, small business owner, or consultant looking to boost your authority, influence, and impact? The Author Switch podcast with best-selling, award-winning author Carma Spence is your answer. Tune in for actionable advice, powerful strategies, and engaging interviews to turn on your author switch and take your business to the next dimension.
The Author Switch.
Hello, and welcome to the Author Switch podcast. I am your host, Carma Spence, and I help executive coaches, business leaders, and consultants write, publish, and market their client attracting books so that they can grow their businesses. And in this episode of the podcast, I'm going to be talking about your hero's journey. Basically, taking the framework that Joseph Campbell created, discovered, elucidated, and applying it to the author's journey. I do this a lot in my work, and I thought I would share with you this framework so that you can take your life story and any story, frankly, and turn it into a compelling yarn for your ideal clients. So, the hero's journey is also known as the monomyth. And basically, Joseph Campbell studied myths and stories through time, and he identified what he thought was a narrative pattern along all these stories. And he called this the hero's journey. Now, just so you know, there is also a heroine's journey, and I will be talking about that next week. This week, I'm focusing on Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. It's a basic structure that revolves around a hero, and he goes on this adventure and it results in something. And there are different steps in it, and I'll be going over those in a moment. But basically, this creates a flexible framework that you can use to create fiction as well as nonfiction. It's a great framework for talking about your life so that people can see you as the hero of your journey and see themselves in your story. Many successful stories and films use this framework. Star Wars comes to mind, but many have used the same structure in order to become really compelling tales. And it can be seen as a metaphor for personal growth. You can actually use this framework to grow by reflecting on your own hero's journey. So here are the stages of the hero's journey. It all starts in the ordinary world. The hero is in an everyday environment. This is how life is for him. So in The Lord of the Rings, you've got Frodo, and he's living in the Shire and he's living his life. I mean, maybe he feels like he doesn't fit in, but he's a hobbit living in Hobbiton. Then there's a call to adventure. This is when something disrupts the hero's normal life, presenting a compelling challenge or quest. So, for example, in your own life, this could be, you're living your life in your business, and then something happens in the economy, or you experience a piece of information that shakes your world, and you realize that the world isn't quite what you thought it was, or it no longer is what you have been experiencing it as. And this calls you to your adventure. Now, often in these stories, the hero first refuses the call. The hero is initially hesitant or expresses fear about going on this journey. And this often in our own lives is when we're like, okay, life has changed. I don't like it. I think I'm just going to go over here and maybe have some ice cream. I know, well, maybe that's just me. But basically, there's a hesitation, there's a fear because life is changing and you're about to do something bold and life changing. Yeah, you're going to experience a little bit of fear and hesitancy. But at this point, this is when you meet your mentor. The hero encounters a wise figure who provides guidance, advice, and tools for the journey. So in Star Wars, that was Obi-Wan Kenobi. In The Lord of the Rings, that is Gandalf. In your life, it's whoever you hire to take you on your next journey. If you're going to write a book, it could be me. It doesn't matter, but there's a mentor who comes in and helps you go on your journey. You don't go this alone. Once you meet the mentor, then the hero crosses the threshold. This is where the hero commits to leaving the ordinary world and entering the special world of the adventure. So this is when Frodo joins the dwarves on the quest, or this is when Luke Skywalker leaves Tatooine. This is when you enroll in a course or hire your mentor and join a group training program. This is when you actually begin your quest. You step out of your ordinary world and into the world of your quest. Next comes tests, allies, and enemies. So this can be for the author's journey. This is usually when you start coming up against your own mind goblins, where you come across your self-doubt or your procrastination or your perfectionism. This is where you get stopped on your journey and you face challenges. It could be that you realize you want to accomplish something in your book that you don't have the skills for yet. Well, this is where your allies and your mentor come into play. So if you're in a group program, you've got automatic allies. Your enemies are those things in your life that are preventing you from moving forward. And your enemies can be internal to your head or they can be external. So that could be just things happening in your life that derail you. And so that's when you need to lean on your mentor and your allies to help you get through those tough times. The next step in the hero's journey, in Joseph Campbell's hero's journey framework, is the approach to the inmost cave. The hero prepares for the most major challenge ahead. Now, when it comes to writing a book, I've found that most people find this innermost cave at the beginning of writing the book when they're like, I don't know if I've got what it takes. But some people experience their innermost cave near the end of the journey when it comes to all that editing and designing and publishing, because the writing part was easy. Everyone's different, and everyone's innermost cave is different. But basically, this is where your biggest challenge is going to be. So if you haven't experienced your biggest challenge in whatever hero's journey you're on right now, one's coming. One's coming. And that's okay. You've got a mentor and you have allies to help you. So, for example, in Star Wars, the inmost cave was the Death Star. That was pretty scary, right? And of course, there's a whole Darth Vader thing. Luke, I am your father, which it turned out he really was. That was, woo. Anyway, back to the hero's journey. The next step is the ordeal. And that's where the hero faces their greatest fear or challenge, often confronting death literally or symbolically. Now, obviously, in the author's journey, actually, not obviously. If the book you're writing is based on your fight against a deadly disease like cancer, because a lot of people do write memoirs after surviving cancer, you literally did face death. You stared it down and you're lived to tell about it. But most people, they're just facing a more symbolic death. And that can be the death of their identity. Their where and I've always found this a little strange, probably because I've identified as an author since I was a very young child. It's been part of my life, most of my life, even before I became an author. I always knew I was going to be one. But a lot of the people I work with have not identified as an author their entire life, and this is a new thing for them. It's like it's such a radical change in their self-identity that sometimes it's very terrifying. But I'm here to tell you it's really quite nice on the other side. So you've got allies and you've got your mentor to help you through. Then you get the reward. This is where in the story the hero obtains something of value because they faced their ordeal. So in the author's journey, you've now got a published book, and it's going to, in my world, it's going to attract clients to you. But to give you a little bit more framework, in Lord of the Rings, Frodo faced the ordeal of the ring and throwing it into the fiery mountain. And now he gets to celebrate with his friends. Now, in the Lord of the Ring books, he also ends up in a boat and goes off to an island. But at least he's at peace. He's at peace. Now, here's the road back. This is where the hero begins the journey back to the ordinary world, but they are changed. They are not who they were when they first left the ordinary world. And that's when you experience the resurrection. The hero faces a final test, often applying what they've learned and experiences a transformation. And now that they've experienced this transformation, they can return with the elixir. That's what I like to think of as your book. You've lived a life where you've had experiences and you've gained expertise. Your book is your way to return to the world the elixir of your knowledge. So the hero returns home, bringing with them something that can benefit the original world. Again, it's your book. But you can use this same framework to tell smaller stories, like a story in the introduction of your book, or a story in your marketing, or perhaps a story which is usually only like 3 sentences to introduce yourself to an audience while you're speaking. So let's go a little bit more detailed into these various pieces so that you know which ones are absolutely essential when you're telling a smaller author's journey and which ones are bigger and you must include it even in your 3-sentence hero's journey. But before we do that, let's hear a word from our sponsor. Do you have a great book but struggle with getting it noticed? Many authors feel lost when it comes to marketing their book effectively. You've put your heart and soul into writing your book, but without a solid marketing plan, it's like shouting into the void. The frustration of low sales and limited visibility can be disheartening. Introducing Serve Up Your Book, the ultimate guide to mastering book marketing. This comprehensive guide helps you lay the foundations before you start writing, ensuring your marketing efforts are built on a solid base. Build your audience while you write, creating a loyal following ready to support your launch. Generate a pre-launch buzz with proven strategies that create excitement and anticipation. Launch your book with impact, turning your release into a major event. Continue marketing your book after the launch, keeping the momentum going and expanding your reach. Filled with actionable insights and practical advice, Serve Up Your Book is designed to help you achieve lasting success. Don't let your book go unnoticed. Serve Up Your Book by Carma Spence, available now on Amazon. Hello and welcome back to the Author Switch podcast. I am your host, Carma Spence, and I help executive coaches, business leaders, and consultants write, publish, and market their client attracting books so that they can grow their business. Before the break, I gave an overview of Joseph Campbell's hero's journey and gave some small tips on how that might apply to your author's journey. And I use examples from The Lord of the Rings and from Star Wars to kind of illustrate some of the finer points. Now I'm going to go through that framework with a little bit more detail and share how you would apply it to your own author's journey. So the first part is your call to adventure. Now, obviously, you've started in the original world, and that's your before story. You know, my client started here, or I started here, and then there was a call to adventure. This is usually that spark, that something that said, you know what, this ordinary world isn't working for me anymore. Then you meet your mentor. That's where the person who is going to help you make the transition from zero to hero, as some people say, but basically from the ordinary world to your transformation. Everyone needs guidance. Everyone does. And sometimes you'll find that guidance in a book, and sometimes you'll find that guidance in a mentor. I mean, I have 3 people that I call my invisible mentors because they helped me develop my fiction writing skills. That's Ray Bradbury, Isaac Asimov, and Ursula Le Guin. I have met Ray Bradbury, but briefly. So I didn't like train under him other than reading his work. And reading these 3 authors has really helped me hone my storytelling skills and find my voice as a writer. Because if you read my work, you can see just little teeny bits of who they are and their influence, as well as me, because I can't help being me. So you're going to need a mentor in order to get through. And so acknowledge your mentor in your story. So, for example, if I was to tell a story in my business, I might say something like, when I first started on business, I didn't really know what I was doing. And then I met Adam Urbanski. Back then, he was teaching his Get Clients course. I can't remember what it was called. I went to one of his live events and it really transformed my business. I went from making pretty much nothing to making 5 figures, which was a big transformation at the time because I also had a day job. Adam Urbanski was the mentor who started me off on my business journey, and I am ever so grateful to him. He still works with people, so check him out. He's amazeballs. He's amazing. I love him. So that's sort of a story where I acknowledge my mentor and how he helped me make that transition. The next thing is where you're crossing a threshold. That crossing the threshold is like when I went to attend his event. I crossed the threshold from, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, to I'm now doing something to learn how to be in business. The next part is, and did you notice that that was like it was not even a full sentence. It was like a partial sentence that made the transition from ordinary world to the quest. And sometimes that's all that crossing the threshold needs to be. It doesn't need to be a story in and of itself. The next is your tests, your allies, your enemies. So if I were to use this story as an example, my friends, my allies, were people I met at the event. Believe it or not, I met Donna Kozik at that event. And I ended up taking her Write a Book in a Weekend course, which is how I came up with the first version of Home Sweet Homepage, which is my first business book, because before that I had only published cookbooks. Of course, Adam Urbanski, he was my mentor. And my enemies at this point in my life, my biggest enemy, I hate to say it, was my husband. That was my first husband, not my current husband. My current husband is delightful. My first husband was a piece of work. And he derailed me a lot. It took me a really long time to get out of that particular environment, but he was definitely one of my enemies, so to speak. But eventually I did get out of that relationship and I moved on to obviously be a little bit more successful in my life. Thank God I kicked him to the curb. All right, the next step is approach to the inmost cave. This is where you think about things and you experience a deep personal growth. And often it is this inmost cave that forms the core of the story. So this is where I'm at this Adam Urbanski event and I am learning I am learning amazing, amazing things that I'm like, oh my gosh, I can do this. And I'm also realizing where I need some work. And I met Pamela Bruner at this event. And back then she was an EFT person. She was making the transition from being a harpist to being an EFT coach. She's now much more than that. But she did a tapping session with me, and it was transformative. I mean, I used to be very, very afraid in group situations. I'm an introvert, so I tend to be kind of shy. And she did a tapping session with me, 15 minutes max, maybe not even 15 minutes of doing tapping around that particular anxiety. And you know what? I haven't had a problem going to events and being in groups ever again. So it was transformative. So many amazing things happened at this event. Thank you, Adam, for holding it and having such amazing people there. The next part is the ordeal. This is your pivotal moment of struggle and transformation. And you want to choose one that really resonates with your readers. I've been doing this off the cuff, so I can't think of one that's related to that story. But ordeals could be like going back to the Star Wars. That might be when Obi-Wan dies. That was, and then he had to run with Han Solo and Princess Leia, and they had already been through the whole garbage thing. And it was a very tumultuous time for Luke where he was like, my mentor has died, and oh my gosh. And it's through that experience that he realizes that he really does have the Force. And I think that's the pivotal moment when he starts on his self-actualization journey, so to speak. You've probably got something like that in your story too. I think one of the points for me in my journey was about 3 years into that first marriage. I went to a Halloween event. It was a horror event because I was really trying to build up something I call a genre traveler. And so I went there because I wanted to interview people and come up with content for the genre traveler. And it was at this event that I made the realization that I might want to divorce my husband. Now, this was only 3 years into the marriage, and I gave him an extra 10 years just in case that wasn't a good decision. It would have been. But, I have nothing if not stick-to-itiveness. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so that was like a pivotal moment. It was when I was really thinking through that whole divorce thing. And eventually, 10 years later, I did divorce him. So once you've gone through this ordeal, you get a reward, right? So the reward of my going through, say, this event with Adam Urbanski, my reward was having a new skill that helped me take my business to the next level, which was at that point in my life, it was going from, I don't know what the heck I'm doing, to now I actually know how to attract clients like crazy. That was the program. Now I know how to attract clients like crazy. And that changes and has evolved over time, but that was really pivotal for me. And I still go back to my binders occasionally to to refresh those lessons because he taught some very foundational stuff. Now you go on the road back. Now, as an author, your road back is when you're writing your book. And this is where you start figuring out what is the story I'm trying to tell here. And you frame it. Sometimes you use the hero's journey for it. Sometimes you use another framework. There are other frameworks. This is not the only one. For example, next week, I'm going to be talking about the heroine's journey. And that one is a slightly different journey. It's more introspective, whereas the hero's journey is more external and action-packed. And then you experience the resurrection, which is where you frame your transformation and your renewed purpose. I kind of like to think of the road back is where you're creating your outline, because that's where you're really figuring out, how do I want to create this book? And your outline is your roadmap. And then your resurrection is actually going through and actually writing the darn thing. And then returning with the elixir, that's when you publish your book. Because now you're going, here, world, here, world, here is my knowledge that you can now use in your own life and transform. So that is how you can take the general hero's journey and apply it to your story. But you need more than just a framework. You need to be able to craft a relatable hero. And that means you need to be able to show and illustrate, if this is your hero's journey, how you are just like where your ideal clients are right now. So that you can tell them, look, I was once just like you. I didn't know what I was doing, but I figured it out and now I'm sharing it with you. And sometimes what helps you create those is archetypes. This is not the episode to really go into those archetypes. If you are interested, I can do another episode on archetypes. But some of the really strong archetypes I found very helpful. There's a book called Goddesses in Every Woman, which was fantastic. Then she wrote Gods in Every Man, which was not as fantastic. I think primarily because she wrote Goddesses in Every Woman as a feminist. And so she couldn't get into the whole gods thing. So she didn't quite handle it as well, but it's still a good book. You can also research, there's a wheel of archetypes that you can Google it, that talks about, there's the Joker and there's the hero and there's all these different archetypes. Another really good framework for archetypes is the tarot, because each of the major arcana within the tarot is actually an archetype. So, for example, the Hierophant and the Hermit are often the mentors, but those are frameworks that you can use to create archetypes. But also, if you just tell your story using that general framework and putting you as the hero, you'll probably do okay. So there you go. There's the hero's journey. And definitely check out next week's episode when I will be talking about the counter to that, which is the heroine's journey. And like I said, the hero's journey is more of an outward, external adventure, whereas the heroine's journey is more an internal transformation. So there you go. I hope that helps you write your client attracting book better, as well as get your story out into the world. This is Karma Spence saying ciao for now. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Author Switch podcast. If you enjoyed today's show and want to support its mission, here's how to help. First, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your engagement helps my channel grow and reach more aspiring and established authors. Your ratings and reviews are invaluable. They help me reach more listeners and continue delivering top-notch content. To catch up on past episodes, including those no longer available on podcast platforms, visit authorswitch.com/episodes. There, you can choose to watch or listen to your favorite episodes at your convenience. If you'd like to show additional support, consider dropping a tip in the tip jar at buymeacoffee.com/Karma Spence. Your contributions help keep the podcast running and are greatly appreciated. Thank you for being a part of the Author Switch community. Until next time, keep writing.